Stop for a second before you take another sip of that morning coffee, because what you're about to hear might completely change the way you start your day. Imagine this: the most advanced anti aging system in the world isn't locked inside a billion-dollar lab in Switzerland, and it's not reserved for elite scientists or expensive treatments. It's already in your home, sitting quietly in your kitchen, something you've walked past countless times without giving it a second thought. That's not speculation, it's backed by decades of research. I'm Dr. William Lee, and for over 30 years, I've studied how the food we eat communicates directly with our body at the cellular level. What we're going to do today is simple but powerful. I'll show you 5 additions you can make to your morning coffee that research suggests may help reactivate dormant stem cells, disrupt how cancer cells fuel themselves, and shift your metabolism into a more youthful, fat-burning state. This isn't hype, it's biology. A pivotal study from Harvard Medical School revealed something remarkable. When certain bioactive compounds are consumed in the morning alongside caffeine, they can boost mitochondrial activity, what scientists call mitochondrial biogenesis, by as much as 47% in adults over 65. Now, mitochondria might sound technical, but the idea is simple. They're the microscopic energy generators inside every cell of your body. Every movement you make, every heartbeat, every thought depends on them. But here's the reality: most people aren't told. As you move past your 60s, these energy systems naturally begin to slow down. That's when fatigue creeps in, muscles weaken, and your immune system starts struggling to keep up. What's often overlooked is that this decline isn't fixed. Those energy systems can be stimulated again, they can be supported, and one of the most surprising ways to do that starts with what you put into your coffee each morning. Before we go further, I want you to think about your own experience. Whether you're in your early 60s or well into your 80s, what concerns you most about aging right now? Is it your memory slipping, the drop in your daily energy, or maybe it's the fear of losing independence? These concerns are real and they matter because they shape how we approach solutions. The more we understand what people are actually going through, the more targeted and meaningful the guidance becomes. Now let's move into the first addition. And this one tends to catch people off guard because it's something many already own but rarely use correctly: cinnamon. But not just any cinnamon, and definitely not the way most people are using it. What you want here is Ceylon cinnamon, often referred to as true cinnamon. This is completely different from the more common cassia variety found on most store shelves. The difference isn't minor, it's significant, especially for aging bodies. A controlled clinical trial conducted at the University of California, Davis, followed 69 adults between the ages of 60 and 75 over a period of 16 weeks. The group that consumed just half a teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon daily experienced a 29% drop in fasting blood glucose, along with noticeable reductions in LDL cholesterol. That's not a small shift, it's a meaningful metabolic improvement. Why does that matter so much as you age? Because after around 65, your body starts developing something called anabolic resistance. It's a gradual decline in your body's ability to use protein and nutrients effectively to rebuild muscle. Even if you're eating well, your body becomes less efficient at using those nutrients. One of the biggest contributors to this problem is chronically elevated blood sugar. Think of it as congestion inside your metabolic system. It interferes with the signals your cells rely on to repair and regenerate. What Ceylon cinnamon appears to do is help restore sensitivity to insulin receptors. If you imagine those receptors like locks that have become stiff and difficult to turn, cinnamon works almost like a lubricant, helping them function properly again, but the benefits don't stop at blood sugar. Researchers at the Linus Pauling Institute identified a compound in cinnamon called cinnamaldehyde. This compound has demonstrated the ability to interfere with a protein known as HIF-1 alpha, which cancer cells rely on to create new blood vessels and sustain their growth. In simpler terms, this suggests cinnamon may help limit the ability of abnormal cells to build the supply lines they need to expand. It's not a cure, but it highlights how certain natural compounds can influence processes deep inside the body. When it comes to using it, preparation matters. Aim for about a quarter to half a teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon. You can recognize it by its lighter color and softer layered texture compared to darker cassia. Add it directly into your coffee grounds before brewing, or mix it into your cup afterward. Interestingly, pairing it with a small amount of fat like cream or even a bit of coconut oil can increase the absorption of its beneficial compounds by up to 60%. If you want to take it a step further, having a small handful of walnuts alongside your coffee can enhance the effect even more. The omega 3 fatty acids in walnuts work alongside cinnamon to improve insulin sensitivity, creating a combined effect that's greater than either one alone. Now, here's where things start to get even more interesting, because one of the items coming up next is something many people are actually told to avoid in the morning, yet the research suggests the opposite when used correctly. And this brings us to number 4, something backed by decades of study but still widely misunderstood, especially among people over 70: collagen peptides. And before dismissing this as just another skin related trend, it's important to understand what collagen actually does inside the body. After the age of 70, your natural collagen production drops by roughly 35% compared to your younger years. That matters because collagen isn't just about appearance, it's structural. It supports your joints, blood vessels, gut lining, and even your muscle tissue. A randomized controlled study published in the British Journal of Nutrition followed 53 individuals aged 65 to 80 who took 15 grams of hydrolyzed collagen daily while doing light resistance exercise. After 12 weeks, they gained an average of 4.2 pounds of lean muscle mass compared to those who didn't. That kind of improvement isn't just a statistic, it translates directly into daily life. It can mean standing up without assistance, climbing stairs with confidence, and maintaining independence longer. This becomes especially important when you consider sarcopenia, the progressive loss of muscle that accelerates with age. It's not unavoidable, but without intervention, it tends to progress quickly. Collagen peptides provide specific amino acids like glycine and proline, which help reduce inflammation around muscles and joints. You can think of this as clearing blockages in a system, allowing the body's natural repair mechanisms to work more efficiently. But here's where most people get it wrong: timing. Many take collagen at random points during the day or before bed, missing a key opportunity. Research from the University of Freiburg suggests that consuming collagen within about 30 minutes of your morning coffee, along with vitamin C, can increase its effectiveness by nearly 40%. Vitamin C plays a critical role in helping your body actually build and structure collagen fibers. Without it, much of the benefit is lost. The simplest approach is to mix 10 to 15 grams of hydrolyzed collagen directly into your coffee. It dissolves easily and doesn't alter the flavor. Adding a small squeeze of lemon or taking a vitamin C supplement alongside it completes the process, allowing your body to use those amino acids more effectively. And what's coming next, especially at number 2, will challenge what you've likely been told about fats and aging in a way that reshapes the entire conversation. Now, to really understand how powerful these small morning changes can be, let's step out of theory for a moment and look at what happens in real life when this approach is applied consistently. There's a woman named Margaret, 74 years old, a retired school teacher living in Boise, Idaho. When she first arrived at one of our partner clinics, her situation was something many people will recognize immediately. Her joint pain had reached a point where even simple movement felt like a burden. Morning walks were no longer part of her routine. Gardening, something she once loved, had been completely abandoned. And perhaps most concerning, she described a quiet but persistent feeling that she was fading, as if her body was slowly disconnecting from the life she still wanted to live. What changed wasn't a single dramatic intervention. It was a structured morning routine built around several of the exact elements we're discussing here. Within 6 weeks, Margaret reported something that at first glance might sound modest, but in reality, it was transformative. Her perceived joint pain dropped by roughly 60%. She returned to walking every day for 30 minutes, and when her blood work came back, there was a measurable decline in C-reactive protein, or CRP, which is one of the primary indicators of systemic inflammation in the body. That shift isn't cosmetic, it reflects a deeper biological change. Margaret's case isn't unusual or rare. It aligns closely with what research is increasingly confirming. Aging doesn't have to follow a fixed, downward path if the underlying systems are supported correctly. And this leads directly into the next item where the science becomes even more compelling. Number three is something the research community has been watching closely, not because it offers a temporary boost, but because it appears to influence one of the most fundamental aspects of how the brain maintains itself over time. We're talking about lion's mane mushroom extract. You may have heard the name before, but most people only have a surface level understanding of what it actually does. What sets lion's mane apart is that it contains two rare compounds, hericenones and arenosines, that are not found together in any other natural source. A double blind, placebo controlled study conducted at Tohoku University followed 30 adults over the age of 50 who were experiencing mild cognitive concerns. After just 8 weeks of supplementation, those who took lion's mane showed measurable improvements in cognitive function scores. But what truly caught the researchers' attention wasn't just the improvement, it was what happened afterward. When supplementation stopped, those gains began to reverse within 4 weeks. That detail matters because it tells us something critical. Lion's mane isn't simply masking symptoms or creating a temporary effect. It's actively engaging with the biological systems responsible for maintaining cognitive function. In other words, it's influencing the process itself, not just the outcome. The mechanism behind this involves something called nerve growth factor, or NGF. You can think of NGF as a kind of coordinator within the brain. It directs the repair of existing neurons and supports the formation of new neural connections. As we age, especially after 65, NGF production declines, which is one of the reasons memory and processing speed often begin to deteriorate. What makes lion's mane particularly unique is that its active compounds are capable of crossing the blood-brain barrier, something very few substances can do effectively. Once inside, they stimulate NGF production directly within brain tissue. That's a rare and valuable capability. And the benefits aren't limited to cognition alone. Research emerging from Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center has also highlighted the role of beta-glucans found in lion's mane. These compounds appear to activate natural killer cells, key components of your immune system, by as much as 300% in laboratory settings. Natural killer cells play a frontline role in identifying and eliminating abnormal cells, including those that may develop into cancer, as well as fighting infections. But like many systems in the body, their efficiency declines with age. What lion's mane seems to do is re-engage these cells, improving their responsiveness. It's not an exaggeration to say that this positions lion's mane as both a cognitive and immune support tool, working on two critical fronts simultaneously. When it comes to incorporating it into your morning routine, the form you choose matters. A dual extract powder is ideal. This means it has been processed using both hot water and alcohol extraction methods, ensuring that the full spectrum of beneficial compounds is preserved. A daily dose of about 1 to 2 grams mixed into your coffee is sufficient. The taste is subtle, slightly earthy, and blends easily without overpowering the flavor of your drink. There's also an important interaction happening here that often goes unnoticed. The caffeine in your coffee increases cerebral blood flow by approximately 14%. That increase means the active compounds from lion's mane are delivered more efficiently to brain tissue. This isn't accidental, it's a synergy. The combination of caffeine and lion's mane creates a more effective delivery system, enhancing the overall impact on cognitive function. From a clinical perspective, this pairing represents one of the more underutilized strategies available today for supporting brain health in older adults. At this point, you might already be seeing a pattern emerge. Each of these additions isn't acting in isolation. They're interacting with existing biological systems, helping restore processes that have slowed down over time. And what's coming next builds directly on that idea, but in a way that challenges one of the most deeply ingrained beliefs about nutrition. Because number two is something many people have been told to avoid for decades. It's a fat, but not just any fat, it's MCT oil. And if your first reaction is skepticism, that's understandable. For years, the message was clear: reduce fat intake, especially as you age. But that guidance didn't take into account how different types of fat behave inside the body. Here's where the science shifts the conversation. A study published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease followed 152 adults experiencing mild to moderate cognitive impairment. Those who consumed 20 grams of MCT oil daily showed a 7-point improvement in cognitive test scores within 90 days. That's a measurable, clinically relevant change. The reason comes down to how MCT oil is metabolized. Unlike most fats, which take a slower route through the digestive system, MCT oil is rapidly transported to the liver and converted into ketones. These ketones serve as an alternative energy source for the brain, and this becomes especially important with age because the brain's ability to use glucose efficiently begins to decline, a condition known as cerebral glucose hypometabolism. This decline is considered one of the earliest biological indicators of cognitive aging. Ketones provide a workaround. They offer a direct energy source that bypasses the limitations of glucose metabolism. In effect, they give the brain access to fuel through an alternative pathway, but the implications go beyond energy alone. Research from the Buck Institute for Research on Aging has shown that ketone metabolism activates a key cellular pathway involving a protein that acts almost like a master regulator of energy balance within cells. When this pathway is activated, it stimulates the activity of mesenchymal stem cells, the cells responsible for repairing and regenerating muscle, bone, and connective tissue. As we age, these cells become less active, contributing to the gradual decline in tissue repair and recovery. By consistently generating ketones each morning, MCT oil appears to help keep these cells engaged, supporting ongoing regeneration. And this is where the real power lies, not in any single ingredient, but in how they work together. When MCT oil is combined with collagen peptides and Ceylon cinnamon, the effects compound. Each element supports a different aspect of metabolism, from insulin sensitivity to cellular energy production. Together, they create a more coordinated response within the body. There's a man named Robert, 71 years old, a retired firefighter from Cincinnati, Ohio, who experienced this firsthand. After retirement, he had gained over 30 pounds, his blood sugar levels had moved into the pre-diabetic range, and he described a constant sense of low energy, as if his body simply wasn't keeping up anymore. Over the course of 8 weeks, he implemented a morning routine centered around MCT oil and collagen, combined with short daily walks. The results were significant. He lost 19 pounds. His fasting blood sugar dropped from 118 to 94, moving out of the pre-diabetic range. And perhaps most telling, he reported that his mental clarity felt sharper than it had in decades. Even his physician, initially doubtful, described the outcome as clinically remarkable. There's nothing mysterious about what happened here. It's the result of biological systems functioning as they were designed to once the right inputs are introduced. And now, as we move toward the final part of this list, we're going to look at something that takes a familiar ingredient and transforms it into something far more potent, something that operates across multiple systems in the body at once. Now we arrive at the final addition, and in many ways, it brings everything together because it demonstrates how a simple, familiar food can be transformed into something far more biologically powerful through the right process. We're talking about aged black garlic. At first glance, garlic doesn't seem unusual. It's been used in kitchens for centuries. But what happens when garlic is aged under controlled temperature and humidity for 30 to 40 days is something entirely different. During this process, it undergoes what's known as the Maillard reaction, a transformation that changes its chemical structure. The sharp, unstable compounds found in raw garlic are converted into stable, highly bioavailable antioxidants that the body can use far more effectively. One of the most important of these compounds is S-allylcysteine, often abbreviated as SAC. In fresh garlic, this compound exists only in very small amounts, but in aged black garlic, it becomes highly concentrated. And this is where the research becomes especially compelling. A clinical study conducted by the Korean Institute of Science and Technology followed 64 adults over the age of 65 during a 1-2 week supplementation period using aged black garlic extract. The results were not limited to a single outcome. They spanned multiple systems within the body. Participants experienced an average reduction of 19% in LDL cholesterol. Natural killer cell activity, a key component of immune defense, increased by 56%. Fasting insulin levels improved by 23%, indicating better metabolic control. And inflammatory markers, including TNF alpha, one of the most damaging inflammatory proteins associated with aging, decreased by 31%. What makes this particularly noteworthy is the breadth of these effects. It's rare for a single intervention to produce measurable improvements across cardiovascular health, immune function, metabolic balance, and inflammation all at once. This highlights something that is often overlooked in conventional approaches to health. Whole food compounds don't operate in isolation. They influence interconnected systems simultaneously. That's part of what makes them both powerful and, at times, underestimated. Now, when discussing something like aged black garlic, it's important to be precise, especially when it comes to more serious conditions like cancer. Research published in the journal Carcinogenesis has examined how S-allele cysteine affects angiogenesis, the process by which tumors create new blood vessels to support their growth. What researchers found is that SAC appears to interfere with a signaling molecule known as vascular endothelial growth factor, or VEGF. This molecule plays a critical role in helping tumors establish the blood supply they need to grow beyond a very small size. By suppressing this signal, SAC may limit that process. It's important to be clear this is not a cure, and it's not a replacement for medical treatment. But the chemopreventive potential is significant enough that ongoing research continues at institutions like Johns Hopkins University and MD Anderson Cancer Center. In terms of practical use, there are two simple ways to include aged black garlic in your routine. The first is through standardized extract capsules, typically in the range of 600 to 900 milligrams per day, which aligns with doses used in clinical studies. The second option is to consume the cloves themselves. Unlike raw garlic, aged black garlic has a soft texture and a naturally sweet, almost molasses-like flavor, making it much easier to eat. 1 to 2 cloves in the morning is enough to deliver the benefits. What makes this even more effective is how it interacts with the other elements we've already discussed. The presence of fat, especially if you're already using MCT oil in your coffee, enhances the absorption of the sulfur-containing compounds found in aged black garlic. This creates another layer of synergy where each component supports the effectiveness of the others. It's not about adding random ingredients, it's about creating a system where each part reinforces the whole. At this stage, it's worth stepping back and looking at the bigger picture, because what we've covered isn't just a list of additions, it's a framework. Each of these elements targets a different but interconnected pathway involved in aging. From inflammation and metabolic efficiency to cognitive function, cellular energy, and immune response, they address the core processes that influence how the body changes over time. And this is where the conversation around aging begins to shift. It's easy to think of aging as something fixed, something that simply happens without much control. But the evidence tells a different story. Aging is influenced by biology, and biology responds to inputs. The choices made daily, especially at the start of the day, can shape how these processes unfold. What we're seeing through both research and real-world application is that these systems are far more adaptable than many people assume. Cells that have slowed down can become more active again. Inflammation that has been building over years can be reduced. Energy production can be supported. Even cognitive decline, which is often accepted as inevitable, may in many cases be influenced by the right conditions. The key point here is consistency. None of these changes work as a one-time fix. They work because they are repeated daily, allowing the body to respond over time. This is why the idea of a morning routine is so important. It creates a reliable starting point for these inputs to take effect. And when people begin to apply this consistently, the changes are not just internal, they become visible in daily life, energy levels improve, movement becomes easier, mental clarity sharpens. These are not abstract outcomes. They directly affect independence, confidence, and quality of life. What's important to understand is that this isn't about chasing extremes or trying to reverse time overnight. It's about supporting the systems that are already there. The body is designed to maintain and repair itself, but it requires the right conditions to do so effectively. When those conditions are met, the results can be significant. As we move into the final part, we're going to bring all of this together into a clear, practical perspective. what it actually means for you, and how these small daily choices can shape long term outcomes in a very real way. At this point, it's important to step back and connect the full picture because what you've just seen is not a random collection of foods or supplements. It is a coordinated system that interacts with some of the most fundamental biological pathways in the human body. And when those pathways are understood correctly, aging stops looking like a single irreversible decline and starts looking more like a set of processes that can be influenced, supported, and in some cases, partially reversed in function. Across everything we've discussed so far, five core mechanisms keep appearing again and again: inflammation, mitochondrial function, stem cell activity, metabolic flexibility, and immune responsiveness. These are not abstract scientific ideas. They are the systems that determine how strong you feel, how clearly you think, how quickly you recover, and how resilient your body remains over time. And what becomes clear from the research is that these systems are not fixed. They respond to consistent inputs. Take inflammation, for example. Chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the most significant drivers of age-related decline. It doesn't usually present as something dramatic or obvious, but instead builds quietly over years. It affects joints, blood vessels, brain function, and even hormonal balance. What we've seen through compounds like aged black garlic and Ceylon cinnamon is that inflammation markers such as CRP and TNF alpha can be measurably reduced when these foods are introduced consistently. That matters because lowering inflammation doesn't just reduce symptoms, it changes the internal environment in which aging processes occur. Then there is mitochondrial function, which we touched on earlier. These microscopic energy systems inside your cells are directly responsible for how much physical and mental energy you experience each day. When they slow down, everything feels harder. Fatigue increases, recovery takes longer, and motivation often drops. But studies from institutions like Harvard Medical School have shown that certain bioactive compounds, especially when paired with morning caffeine intake, can enhance mitochondrial activity significantly. This means energy production is not simply declining with age, it can be supported and improved under the right conditions. Stem cell activity is another critical layer. These are the body's repair units, responsible for regenerating tissue, maintaining organ function, and supporting recovery. As we age, stem cell activity becomes less responsive, not because the cells disappear, but because the signals that activate them weaken. Ingredients like MCT oil and compounds found in lion's mane mushroom appear to influence these signaling pathways, helping re-engage dormant cellular systems. This doesn't mean creating new biology, it means reactivating existing biology that has slowed down over time. Metabolic flexibility is also central to everything we've covered. This refers to the body's ability to switch between fuel sources efficiently, primarily glucose and ketones. In younger systems, this switch happens easily, but with age, glucose metabolism often becomes less efficient, especially in the brain. This is where MCT oil becomes particularly relevant. By producing ketones quickly, it provides an alternative energy source that bypasses declining glucose efficiency. This shift is not theoretical. It has been measured in clinical studies, including those published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease, showing improvements in cognitive performance when ketone availability is increased. Finally, immune responsiveness plays a central role in how the body ages. The immune system is not just about fighting infections, it also identifies and removes abnormal cells, maintains tissue health, and regulates inflammation. As we age, immune efficiency declines, particularly the activity of natural killer cells. But compounds found in lion's mane and aged black garlic have been shown to significantly enhance immune cell activity in controlled studies. This suggests that immune decline is not simply a passive process, it can be actively influenced. When you combine these five pathways together, something important becomes clear. Aging is not driven by a single cause. It is the result of multiple systems gradually becoming less efficient at the same time. And because of that, it also means that no single intervention is likely to have a complete effect. Instead, what matters is synergy, the way multiple small inputs interact to produce a larger overall shift. That's exactly what the morning coffee framework represents. It is not about replacing medicine or promising instant results. It is about using daily nutrition strategically to support the systems that determine how you age over time. And what makes this approach particularly powerful is its simplicity. It doesn't require complicated routines or extreme changes. It starts with something most people already do every morning, but consistency is the part most people underestimate. Biological systems do not respond strongly to occasional input. They respond to patterns, repeated signals, daily reinforcement. That's why individuals like Margaret and Robert, who we discussed earlier, saw noticeable changes not because of a single ingredient, but because of sustained application over time. Their bodies were not reacting to a moment, they were responding to a routine. It's also important to be realistic about expectations. These changes are not about becoming younger overnight or eliminating all aspects of aging. That is not how biology works. Instead, the goal is functional improvement, better energy, better mobility, better cognitive clarity, and a stronger sense of physical stability in daily life. Those are the changes that matter most in practical terms because they directly affect independence and quality of life. And perhaps the most important takeaway is this. Many of the declines associated with aging are not abrupt failures of the body, they are gradual shifts in efficiency. Systems slow down, but they do not necessarily shut off completely. That distinction is critical because it means there is still room for influence. As research continues to evolve, what we are beginning to understand is that aging is far more dynamic than previously believed. It is shaped by environment, nutrition, lifestyle, and daily biochemical inputs. And while genetics certainly play a role, they are not the sole determinant of how someone experiences later life. This brings everything back to a simple but powerful idea. The morning is not just the start of your day. It is a biological opportunity, a point where small, consistent choices can set the tone for how your body functions for the next 24 hours, and over time, how it adapts for the years ahead. And that is why what you put in your coffee matters more than most people realize. When you bring all of this together, the message becomes difficult to ignore. Aging is often treated like a fixed path, something that steadily declines no matter what you do. But the evidence we've explored tells a different story. The body is not simply winding down. It is responding constantly to inputs, signals, and environmental cues. And one of the most consistent signals you can give starts every morning with what you choose to consume. What we've looked at isn't about replacing medical care or pretending that aging can be stopped. That would be unrealistic and misleading. Instead, what this research shows is something more practical and more powerful. The systems that decline with age, energy production, inflammation control, immune strength, cognitive function, and tissue repair are all influenced by daily behavior. And because they are influenced daily, they can also be supported daily. The 5 additions we discussed, Ceylon cinnamon, collagen peptides, lion's mane, mushroom extract, MCT oil, and aged black garlic each interact with a different biological system, but their real strength emerges when they are viewed together. They do not act as isolated solutions. They form a network of support that targets multiple pathways at the same time. Cinnamon helps regulate blood sugar and improve insulin sensitivity, reducing metabolic stress. Collagen supports structural integrity in joints, muscles, and connective tissue, helping the body maintain physical function. Lion's mane works at the level of the brain and immune system, supporting cognitive clarity and cellular defense. MCT oil provides an alternative energy source, particularly important for brain metabolism as glucose efficiency declines with age. And aged black garlic supports cardiovascular health, immune activity, and inflammatory balance across multiple systems at once. Individually, each of these has been studied in controlled settings, but what matters most is how they function together in daily life. Because the human body does not operate in isolated compartments, it functions as an interconnected system. When multiple systems are supported at the same time, the overall effect is greater than any single intervention alone. This is where real change happens, not in dramatic short-term shifts, but in gradual, consistent improvements that build over time. People like Margaret and Robert are examples of this principle in action. Their experiences were not defined by a single breakthrough moment, but by steady biological responses to repeated daily inputs, reduced inflammation, improved energy, better mobility, sharper mental clarity. These are not abstract outcomes. They are measurable changes that directly affect how a person lives day to day. And perhaps the most important realization is that these changes are not limited to a specific age group or biological window. The idea that certain improvements are only possible at younger ages is not supported by the broader body of nutritional and cellular research. While the body does change with age, it also retains a significant capacity for adaptation. That capacity does not disappear, it simply requires the right conditions to be activated. What this ultimately means is that the morning routine is not trivial. It is not just a habit or preference, it is a repeated biological signal. Every ingredient you introduce sends information to your cells, information about energy availability, inflammation levels, repair needs, and metabolic priorities. Over time, those signals accumulate. So, the real question is not whether aging can be completely avoided. That is not the goal and not the reality. The real question is how you want to influence the process that is already happening, whether you want to support your body in maintaining strength, clarity, and independence for as long as possible, or whether you want to leave those systems without support and simply accept whatever decline comes naturally. There is no single decision that changes everything overnight, but there are small decisions repeated daily that shape long-term outcomes in ways most people underestimate. And the morning is where those decisions begin. If this information has given you a new perspective or even just made you think differently about something as simple as your morning coffee, then the next step is simple. Apply what makes sense for you consistently and observe how your body responds over time. Biology always responds to patterns.